I'm Andy, and welcome to this week's Team Kentucky Update. Share, including a ground jobs. And the fourth quarter is when so many additional announcements come in. We're also looking at investments thus far of over $9 billion. That means that 2022 is set to at least be the second best year for economic development in the history of Kentucky, meaning we are in the midst of back to back our best years of economic development than we have ever seen. Under this administration, we've now announced more than 720 new location and expansion projects, with the private sector contributing to more than $22 billion of new investment and approximately 41,000 new jobs for Kentuckians. So, first, I want to highlight another investment in our state's bourbon and spirits industry. On Tuesday, I was able to join Western Kentucky Distilling Company to formally announce and break ground on a nearly $22 million investment with the potential to grow to $30 million. With a second phase to expand operations, this new distillery is in Beaver Dam. The project will create 35 full-time Kentucky jobs and will include 15 warehouses in addition to a 25,000 square foot distillery. Construction began in June of 2022, and the facility is scheduled to become operational in May of 2023. Perhaps the most exciting part of this announcement is the company is committed to sourcing 100% of its materials and production right here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Western Kentucky Distilling will make its Kentucky bourbon with Kentucky-made equipment. Will be owned by Kentucky residents, buy corn from Kentucky farmers, and create quality Kentucky jobs. It's this type of commitment and investment that creates jobs and long-lasting economic momentum throughout the state. It is also in a business park in Ohio County that I think is set to really explode, and this is going to be that very first big project to make it happen. I want to thank Western Kentucky Distilling Company and their leadership for their continued belief in our resources, workforce, and communities. These are neat Kentucky families from Owensboro and Lexington coming together to achieve a dream and create jobs all at the same time. These are great folks that I think are going to be really successful. Today, we're also keeping up with our workforce training efforts with more support for the Bluegrass State Skills Corporation. During the past fiscal year, BSSC assisted with training more than 35,400 Kentucky residents, the most in the past 6 years. We're keeping that momentum rolling by providing an additional nearly $2 million in funds and credits to assist with training for an additional 8,432 Kentucky workers. That pushes our total support from the state to over $3.8 million to train more than 12,700 Kentuckians. The BSSC Grant in Aid and Skills Training Investment Credit Programs provide employers across Kentucky with funding for training initiatives through cash reimbursements and income tax credits to help offset costs. We are amid economic growth like we have never seen before. And to keep pace with what is unprecedented growth, we have to be proactive by investing in our workforce training. BSSC is a big part of that effort. We are proud of them. We love partnering with this group, and I can't wait for us together, along with all the others in the state that are doing this, to not only meet the expectations, but fill every single great job that we're announcing day in and day out, along with all the great jobs that already exist in the Commonwealth. All right, some additional great news for our general fund. Today, our state budget director, John Hicks, who also moonlights as the executive cabinet secretary, is reporting that October's general fund receipts rose 15.2% over last year's totals. That means revenues for October were $1.2 billion above last year's $1 billion October. This is the highest revenue for an October ever in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We're setting an incredible pace as receipts have increased 6.5% for the first 4 months of the fiscal year. And this is the 8th month of this year. Remember, we've been through 10 months of this year. 8 of them have had collections exceeding $1 billion, something that was rarely seen in the past in Kentucky. The increase shows a couple of things. We hear about the national economy and this and that, but when you look at these receipts, it shows that Kentucky continues to have strong business and job growth. That's number one, because the receipts prove that. And number two, the Kentuckians are confident in our economy. This news follows August, where we led the entire country in new job growth. I can't remember that ever happening in my lifetime, Kentucky being number one. And we tied for number one in September. And sure, I'm happy for New Hampshire, but that means 2 straight months that we, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, have led the entire country in new job growth. That's something that we should all be really proud of. In July, we reported the highest annual growth in revenue in 31 years. And we are sitting at the largest rainy day fund in our history with about $2.5 to $2.7 billion. It was $129 million when I came into office. And one of the most important jobs as governor is to ensure our financial house is in order, and it is in better shape anytime, certainly in my lifetime. We continue to have strong fiscal management and a record-breaking economy, and that's right now. Think about all these announcements and what that means for the next several years. This is a historic opportunity for us to become everything that we have ever dreamed of, to become a top 10 state economy. Look at who the largest companies on earth are investing in right now. They're investing in Kentucky at a time when our budget and our financial house in government is also in good shape, and our businesses in many ways are producing more revenue than ever before. But if we want to reach that potential, if we want to make sure we keep this going, we have to be looking out for our kids. As the parents of young children, teenagers, and young adults, the Lieutenant Governor and I know the best thing that we can do to ensure we grasp the potential that is in front of us is to make sure all of our children have a world-class education. That's why our Education First plan that we put out several weeks ago is so critical. We have 11,000 teacher vacancies in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Think about that. How do we claim that we can give our kids the best education when we have 11,000 openings that are needed in classrooms or in buildings right now around the Commonwealth to make that happen? We fell this last year from 42nd to 44th in teacher pay. Kentucky, which was number one in job growth 2 months this year, is number 44 in teacher pay. That is not the way we build a better Commonwealth. You don't build a better Commonwealth by selling your kids short and by not investing in their education. And here's where it is. It's simple math. We're on track right now to have a $1.357 billion surplus this fiscal year. That is the biggest in state history. We have more than enough money to address this teacher shortage, more than enough money to catch our kids up in math and reading or any learning loss due to the pandemic, but we can't catch a child up on math if they don't have a math teacher. This is not a red or a blue issue. If you value the education of the children of Kentucky, whether they're yours or not, you have to have a teacher in that classroom. So our proposal would provide state funding for 5% across the board raises for every educator across Kentucky, and that's in addition to the raises that are currently going on locally, and we need both to be competitive. Second big piece is universal pre-K, something we can and should afford. Not only will ensure every single child is kindergarten ready and helping our kids learn to read going into kindergarten is certainly going to improve reading scores, make sure that nobody starts behind. But it's also the number one thing we can do for the maternal workforce to get more people back out there and working. But I just want to break down this math. If you look at those two planks alone, we can pay for them in this next budget, given that we have a $1.357 billion projected surplus and still have $919 million left over We can give a 5% raise to every educator across the state and have universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds and still end up with the third largest budget surplus of all time. Folks, that is a no-brainer. That's something we have to do, and it's something we can't afford not to do. Just think about it. With the biggest budget surplus in state history, can't we take some of that money and pay teachers closer to what they're worth? Can't we take that money to ensure we don't have 11,000 teacher vacancies? These are my kids, and these are your kids and grandkids. So please, this is one where we should all be together, one team, Team Kentucky, saying our teachers shouldn't be living in poverty, driving an Uber at night. Actually, Rocky was telling me a story about a single mom, one of our public school educators that's having to bartend at night to send her son to college. That's wrong. We've got a chance to fix that. We've got a chance to do better. We have more than enough money to do it. So let's not do the political thing. Let's just do the right thing here. All right, next I want to recap some other actions that we have taken to increase our workforce. Like we said, our economy has been on fire with record-breaking economic growth. We're creating a ton of new jobs. At the same time, our baby boomers, my parents, are retiring. They've earned it, but it does put a strain on the number of eligible folks that can enter our workforce. Remember, they are the largest generation in the history of planet Earth. And so when they retire, haven't earned that retirement, it means we're going to have to get a little creative. So we're taking steps right now to address barriers for other folks that aren't in the workforce. First, we're looking at how poor health can impact the workforce. That is why we recently expanded Medicaid, or announced that we will, to cover vision, hearing, and dental. Pretty simple. We can't ask a person to work a job if they can't see well enough to drive to the job. And that individual isn't safe on the job if they can't hear the instructions or warnings to stay safe on that job. And we already have the data over the millions of hours of work lost each year due just to emergency dental procedures. These are common sense steps that we can already afford in our Medicaid budget, which we must do. The other thing I already talked about is universal pre-K. That doesn't solve all of our child care challenge, which is a huge challenge with no easy answers. But it's been proven for parents of 4-year-olds to put a lot of people back in the workforce, and it's really good for the kids. It also saves parents about $12,000 a year. Think about that savings for Kentucky parents and what it can mean. And on Monday, we made 2 additional announcements to support our workforce and help our justice-involved population. The first is the Prison to Work Pipeline, which is a partnership with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. It's going to be in all 13 of our prisons, 19 local jails that house inmates. Basically, this is going to be a program that's about a couple simple facts. One, that 95% of folks incarcerated right now will be let out at some point. And second, that we have job openings, and we believe, and our faith teaches us, in second chances. But how about third, that the number one way we can reduce recidivism, and what that means is we can reduce people committing additional crimes, that we can decrease crimes by folks that have gotten out of incarceration. The number one thing we can do is have a stable job. So this Prison to Work Pipeline is about placing incarcerated individuals in jobs and having a start date before they actually get out. It requires second chance employers who get a long time to vet and to get to know these individuals. But this is one employee at Florida Tile, and it was really neat. He was talking about getting his GED while he was incarcerated, so he wouldn't just be working an entry-level job, that he would have an opportunity for advancement. Great success story by him, but also a great model of citizenship and innovation by Florida Tile itself. In addition to this, we've also launched a program with our incarcerated individuals to help them with job skills, interview skills, other skills that'll be necessary to secure and ultimately to hold a job. Now, listen, our recidivism rate, believe it or not, is the lowest I think we've had in history, but it's still I think close to 30%. That's way too high. If we can put people in good jobs, if we can help people rebuild their lives, listen, our faith calls on us to do that. But if we can also reduce crime by doing it, opportunity, thus reducing crime, that will make all of our communities safer. I want to give a brief update on where we are in gas prices in Kentucky. As we sit here today, our average is $3.48. We are 32 cents below the national average, and we are still one of the states with the lowest prices around the country. But inflation is still real, and even gas prices that are that much below the national average can be tough. Listen, the war on Ukraine is also going to make heating our homes that much more difficult, and food prices, when I think 60% of the world's wheat is grown in Ukraine and Russia, it has had a severe and significant impact. So I want to make sure that people remember that there have been things we have done to save the money, as well as tips to save. So remember, first, I signed an executive order freezing the rate on vehicle property taxes, which we're going to increase. That's saving Kentuckians $340 million. Second, I tried to decrease the sales tax temporarily. General Assembly wouldn't go along with it, but that would have made everything cost less. Third, listen, while I can't control gas prices, I did stop them from going up because a state statute passed by the General Assembly would have increased the price of gas with an increased state gas tax. That is not okay, and it's not acceptable in times like this. So I froze that too, saving Kentuckians at the pump every single time they go there. I've also asked top administrators at the EPA and other areas to take actions that they haven't yet, but we still hope that they will consider to save us money at the tank and in other ways. But the most important part of today is I wanted to show the tips to save one more time. If we can pull those up, these are all ways to help save on your rent, to help save on your mortgage, to help save on your internet bill. Because listen, even if you're struggling, having internet at your home and at your business is so important for education and healthcare. Your child care assistance programs. Community Action has so many different programs. The prescription drug assistance programs, the Medicare prescription drug plan. Please take a look at all of these. If we can save you $10 here, $30 there, $50 there, then all of that ultimately will go and help lessen the blow on where inflation is right now. All right, I want to do an update on the nonprofit fund. The Teen Kentucky Nonprofit Assistance Fund was created. We announced it in August with $75 million to help Kentucky's nonprofit organizations recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. So far, 839 nonprofits have received awards totaling over $56 million. And we're hearing from these nonprofits that the money is really helping them through difficult times because they do important work, and they're getting excited about not just surviving, but meeting future goals. We've heard from the Homeless Coalition of Louisville that the money is helping to buy furniture, pay housing deposits, and get people off the streets. Louisville Grows plans to use the money to grow ideas into projects and cover general operating costs for their small nonprofit organization. Upside Therapeutic Riding told us the money gives them hope of recovery after COVID-19 closures and rising costs. And Kentucky Humanities says the money allows them to continue to illuminate Kentucky's story through humanities events. Applications are still being processed. There's money still left in the fund. So any nonprofit, this is important, any nonprofit who missed the original deadline to apply, the portal is now open again until Wednesday, November 16th at 4 p.m. Awards up to $100,000 in unrestricted funds are available for qualified applicants who have not previously applied or received an award. Nonprofits can learn more and apply at teamkynonprofitfund.ky.gov. All right, a brief update on wildfires, because if you're in the Lexington or even the Frankfort area, certainly if you're in Estill County or an area where these are occurring today, you woke up smelling, maybe even seeing haze from wildfires. So the U.S. National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning for eastern Kentucky. That means there's an increased risk of fire danger because of dry conditions, warm temperatures, very low humidity, and strong winds that are expected to produce an increased risk of fire danger. As of this morning, Kentucky now has 52 active fires across the state in 28 counties, covering more than 6,000 acres. 32 of the fires are still burning, but are contained. The other 20 are in the process of being contained. The two largest fires in Estill County have burned almost 1,000 acres. One is contained and the other is in process of being contained. The Forestry Division is working, and let me say, our Forestry Division are a group of great individuals that work really hard. These were groups out with saw teams after the floods, clearing roads, and after the tornadoes, clearing roads. I'm really proud of this group and how hard they work for Kentuckians in times of danger and in times of need. So our Forestry Division is working with the U.S. Forest Service in a unified command. They're using helicopters for water drops, as well as other techniques. More than 15,700 acres have burned so far this fall fire season that began October 1st. 5 state forestry agencies, those are from Virginia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and Texas, have offered assistance, and they're each sending at least one crew. We want to thank everybody for their help. Many counties have burn bans in place. I'm asking each Kentuckian to be responsible and refrain from outdoor burning at this time. Debris burning, campfires, sparks from farm equipment can quickly cause a fire, and we are stretched thin. There is some good news. We may get rain tomorrow, and we need some rain to ultimately help us extinguish all of our existing fires. So we want rain. We want enough rain. Obviously, we don't want too much rain. We've been through that. But everybody, if you will, let's hope, let's pray, and let's make sure we thank those that are out fighting these wildfires. Speaking of too much rain, let's do a quick update on our Eastern Kentucky floods. Still at 43 fatalities in 6 counties. Still have the one missing individual, Vanessa Baker. FEMA disaster recovery centers and multi-agency resource centers are still open. And I want to talk about this for a minute. Now, they are going to be closed tomorrow, which is Veterans Day, but otherwise they're going to be open until November 22nd. People are visiting these centers in person, and they are getting results. If you still have a claim that you are not satisfied with, if you have been denied, if you don't think you've received enough money, now to November 22nd, wear these centers out. Get in there. Look people eye to eye. Make sure you know what documents are needed. I will tell you, since the FEMA application period on October 28th, when new applications closed, more than $3 million has been approved. And they've been approved primarily through these centers. Now, the most common reasons for ineligibility, I'm going to do 3 of them. No response to FEMA's attempts to contact survivors. That's not picking up the phone. Missed inspections. That's not being at the place at the time of the inspection. And I'm sorry, those are the 2, but I want to give a number here. Currently, we know there are 2,000 homeowners and renters that right now haven't been approved just because of those reasons. Now, folks, we know that's on us, right? We've got to pick up the phone. We've got to be at the inspection. We got 2,000 Kentuckians that are out there that we might still be able to get approved for FEMA individual assistance. So if you know somebody that is struggling, first of all, take them to a disaster recovery center. They can do everything here that they could do on that phone call, but they still have to be in the inspection. And please answer your phone, be at the inspection. We want you to get the help that you deserve. But remember, I mean, FEMA's got to be able to talk to you. They've got to be able to see the site where you suffered all that damage. Come on, let's, before November 22nd, all 2,000 applicants, let's make sure we talk to FEMA. We get those inspections scheduled. We show up. Let's get you approved. I want you to get the money that will help begin to rebuild your lives. Currently, individual assistance, $86.8 million from FEMA. Currently, $55.5 million from the U.S. Small Business Association. 224 people still sheltered in our state parks. That's down from 360 September 1st. People are finding longer-term housing, which is a good thing. Let's put up the travel trailers. We now have 320 on site across 10 locations. 645 people now sheltered in those. That is up 36 since the last update. Now every single one of the sites, including the two bottom ones that we had to build out from scratch, are up, are operational, and we are getting occupied. We do have households transitioning out. That's a good thing. Again, when you transition out, especially from travel trailers, it means you found more long-term housing. These are just the public sites. Of those 205 households pending, I think at least half want a private placement. In other words, on their property. And that's something we're looking at if their property is outside of the floodplain. And then, of course, it has to be safe with the utility hookups and other options. So of the 205, a portion of them, at least for now, is not applying to be in one of these sites. So we continue to work. This is, 230 to 40 more travel trailers than we had in the West. Significant number of people that we're making sure that we can provide this intermediate housing for. I'm really proud of especially our transportation cabinet. Kyle Pogue has helped lead this effort. Kyle is from Western Kentucky and is normally stationed in Western Kentucky, but took everything he learned from those tornadoes and has been in the East just about every day. I know he's got a big team. So thank you to everybody in KYEM. Thank you to our transportation cabinet, public protection cabinet, helping with the electrical and other inspections and getting them done. All right, health updates. I'm actually going to start with something other than COVID, and that is influenza. The spread of the flu right now is at widespread levels. In prior recent years, this level of flu was not detected until much, much later. Actually, we almost eliminated the flu during COVID at certain points. One influenza death has been reported for the 2022-2023 flu season. The majority of influenza detections in Kentucky have been identified as type A, and if you want to be really detailed, that's H3N2. The flu vaccine that's been updated this year is going to perform really well against that strain of flu. So what that means is for the dominant strain that's out there, admittedly, it's not the only one, the flu shot's going to work pretty well this year. Folks, my kids are out of school for the next 3 days, yesterday through the end, because of how many people are getting sick from flu and other things. Please get the flu shot. You've probably got it in multiple previous years. This is no joke this year. It'll make you sick, but more importantly, it will disrupt school. It'll disrupt work, and you're more likely to be spreading it out there to people that will have a couple of rough days at least. So please get that flu shot. Early data indicates vaccination rate for children this flu season is right now 21.3%. Now that's higher than 2021, but flu wasn't going around the same way. It's well below the health people target of 70% and lower than is optimal at this level, widespread of flu. So that's flu. It's really big this year. Please get your flu shot. RSV, though, is out there and is really strong too. We are almost full in our pediatric beds in our 3 pediatric hospitals. The 2 hospitals that have pediatric ICUs, almost every bed is full. RSV is really rough this year. It's a common respiratory virus that typically causes mild cold-like symptoms. People of any age can become infected. Most recover in 1 to 2 weeks, but it can be real serious for both infants and older adults. So it's not a reportable disease, so we can't tell you exactly how much is there, but laboratories providing data to the tracking of RSV to the CDC give us an idea it is way up. So be careful. And once I finish COVID, if you're susceptible as an adult, if you have some of those conditions where RSV or the flu or COVID could make you really sick, consider wearing that mask in public, especially when you are indoors. I'm not saying this just because of COVID. I'm not saying this in some national effort. It's because we're seeing people get really sick from RSV, that the flu, especially if you're older, can be really damaging. So listen, we all have the masks that we can pull out. If you need to wear one, if you are somebody that it could cause serious harm to, really consider that, especially over the coming month to months. But finally, COVID is much better news. Let's put up the map. Still a lot of green, 3 red counties right now, and some yellow counties. Now, as we get into the rest, what you're going to see is, we think, a general plateau. You know, we've had a nice decrease. Now we're seeing a little up, a little down in cases, and then go ahead. Look, this really shows the plateau, right? It's never exactly flat. It's up and down and up and down. And again, it's the cases are now not as great of an indicator, because we know there are more cases than we see on that chart. The positivity rate's almost reverse. You're only going to get a PCR test right now if you're pretty sure you have it. But look at these. General leveling out for hospitalization. Go back, if you will. But while I say leveling out, we're still at one of the lowest points, with some of the fewest people hospitalized for COVID than at any point during the pandemic. This is vaccinations. This is therapeutics. This is us getting better about testing. This is also that the current strains don't hit us as hard as especially that Delta did. ICUs prove that out, some of the lowest we've been, and thank God, the next slide, ventilators are really low. But COVID's still serious. It's still killing people. And all you have to do is go out and get that new booster. Listen, almost all deaths right now are amongst people who are unvaccinated or who haven't been boosted. And that's your system going down, almost like you would become unvaccinated again, though you'd still have some additional protections. So with Thanksgiving coming up, with us getting multiple generations together, with RSV out there, with the flu out there, please get your flu shot and your COVID booster. We really don't want, we've had almost 3 straight Christmases and Thanksgiving where we end up losing some of our loved ones that we get together with because of these things spreading. Let's not let this happen this time. We're so far into this pandemic. We have so many tools to do it. Just look out after yourselves and the people that you love. And listen, if to date you haven't gotten that vaccine, just please consider it. Don't do it for me. Do it because you either know people that you've lost, or you just want to make sure that those celebrations this year, Christmas celebration, is as safe as it can be. All right, we have 74 cases of monkeypox, 17 different counties, all in adults. 6,300 doses of monkeypox vaccines have been administered in Kentucky. All right, some really great news. Yesterday, I had the privilege of joining the Kentucky State Police to honor 31 troopers and officers who have been promoted to leadership positions. These are folks that go above and beyond, those that are entering supervisory positions or going to even higher ranks. These folks work hard every single day to protect our families. And remember, they leave their families each morning to protect ours. Really proud of all of these individuals. Knew more of them than I thought I might. Even got to meet one of these now sergeants, new kiddos, new babies. It's a great crew in the Kentucky State Police, and we're grateful for them. Okay. Today, and a little preview, is going to be a historic day for our Kentucky State Capitol. This afternoon, we will be unveiling the first large-scale monument honoring a woman. That woman is Nettie Depp. An advocate for educational reform and equality, Depp was the first woman elected to public office in Barron County when she became the superintendent of schools in 1913. Nettie Depp was a hardworking public official for nearly 7 years before the ratification of the 19th Amendment. The historical significance of her election to leadership in a position cannot be diminished. She got elected as a woman before women could vote under the 19th Amendment. She's a true trailblazer for public education and for the women of Kentucky. Monuments like this one celebrate a specific individual's legacy and actions. They are larger than life reminders for future generations to see. So today I'll be joining some pretty incredible women to unveil this statue. They include Brittany, my wife. I want to make sure I mention her first. They include our very own teacher, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman, the sculptor, Amanda Matthews, and Quisha Bacon Brown, a member of the Monumental Women of Kentucky Committee. The event starts at 3 p.m. We're going to have a big old crowd, but it's also going to be on Facebook and on YouTube. And finally, I want to talk about our team, Kentucky All-Stars. So this morning, I was proud to attend Congressman Yarmouth's annual African American Veterans Breakfast in Louisville, where we recognized all of our service members. Tomorrow is Veterans Day. Right? That is a day we honor our American veterans. Really, we should be honoring them every day, but tomorrow is a special day where we ensure that the entire country stops for a minute, for a day, and pays tribute to those who have fought for our freedom. So today I'm naming all of our brave veterans as this week's Team Kentucky All-Stars. As Kentuckians and as Americans, we continually give thanks to our veterans for their bravery, selflessness, and dedication to our great country. They fight on the front lines of war, save lives in times of natural disaster and throughout the pandemic, and they defend our way of life. And we pray for those who continue to serve, and we grieve for the families of those that have been lost. And I hope that we as Kentuckians can commit to the hard work of being worthy of the sacrifices of our veterans. I'm proud of the work that our administration does to support Kentucky veterans. From breaking ground on the new Bowling Green Veterans Center this month, which will provide the best possible care, that is nothing short of a sacred duty. And this will be a top-of-the-line facility. All 4 of our existing centers are 5-star rated. That is the highest rating of a veterans center. This year, I signed 4 pieces of great legislation to help our veterans. They include cutting state taxes on military retirement pay and simplifying the job certification process for military spouses, because whole families move to protect our country. And we've got to stand not just with the serviceman or woman, but with their spouse as well. And through our Veterans Program Trust Fund, we're supporting organizations like Honor Flight Bluegrass, Honor Flight Kentucky, Louisville chapter of the National Association of Black Veterans, and the Homeless Veterans Trust Fund. So I'm proud today to name each and every one of our veterans our Team Kentucky All-Stars. We love you. We're grateful for you. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice. All right, we'll open it up to questions. 1 journalist here and 3 on the line. Tom Latek.
All right, thank you, Governor. 2 quick ones. First of all, why not put Ms. Depp in the rotunda? Is there something else that is earmarked for there? And do you have any reaction to the redistricting lawsuit today?
The Nettie Depp statute was scheduled to be in the location it's going to be unveiled in prior to there being any additional room in the rotunda. I certainly think if another statue is going to be placed in the rotunda, first, a woman would be a great choice. But it needs to have full input from around the Commonwealth. It needs to be a decision that we as a people make collectively. And I think that if we are going to do that, because it's also nice to have a little extra space in there, you've been at a number of events in there, that we've just got to do it in the right way and the full way that gets everybody's voice heard. Second question is about the ruling on the redistricting lawsuit. So I'm not a party to that lawsuit, but I did get a quick chance to look at parts of it, and it says 2 things that I think are important. Number 1, it says that the supermajority of our General Assembly very clearly engaged in significant party gerrymandering in the redistricting process. In other words, they very intentionally went in and tried to cut up different areas to benefit them and their party. And let me first say, I think that's wrong. I think that voters should choose their elected officials, and elected officials, shouldn't take the math and split out voters so they win no matter what. That is not good for democracy. And what it does is disenfranchise people in communities. When you take a city, and we've had, 4 or 5 of them, and cut it up 8 or 9 ways, they may end up with no state representative that even lives in the city limits. Counties, this can happen as well. Listen, what you'll hear is, well, Democrats did it then and Republicans did it now. Wrong's wrong. Now, this is one of those things where other states have gone to a nonpartisan redistricting group, and that's what I would support. Let's just do it right for democracy. So the first thing they said is that this definitely occurred. And listen, it's an explanation for some of the seats that flipped. If you totally change the voters and you do it very intentionally, then as long as your math is right, you can create one of those results. The second thing, though, they said is that the judge said is he believes under Kentucky's Constitution you're allowed to engage in blatant partisan redistricting, and that's something that I know the parties will have to review and make a determination before any next steps. But I think both of the findings are really important. All right, next, Melissa Patrick from Kentucky Health News.
Hey, Governor. So, recognizing that you are a lawyer, do you think the Supreme Court should reinstate Judge Perry's injunction and allow the state's 2 abortion clinics to reopen and find, as he did, a right to abortion in the state's constitution?
Well, Melissa, my law license is frozen right now. But let me answer it this way. I believe that on Tuesday, the voice of the people was heard. And I think the people said very clearly, and if the amendment had been written even more clearly, would have said even more definitively that victims of rape and incest deserve options, that we have the most extremist trigger law in the country. And what it means is people as young as 9, this has happened, who can only become pregnant through first-degree rape. Right now, they have 0 options. Right now, some of our Kentucky women that cannot have a successful pregnancy are still required to go through that knowing what's going to happen and that trauma. Listen, especially those that have been harmed, victims of rape and of incest and of human trafficking, right? Society has failed them. They've been harmed each and every day. They deserve options. And that's what the people of Kentucky have said. So if the Supreme Court follows the will of the people, and listen, both sides of that amendment said this is the expression going to the Supreme Court. One side only changed their mind the next day. Then my hope is that the Supreme Court will listen to the will of the people and know that the people have rejected extremism and rule accordingly. All right, Tessa Duvall from the Herald Leader.
Governor, you mentioned this in your response to an earlier question regarding the redistricting lawsuit. You said that the gerrymandering was responsible for some of the Republican Party's gains in the state legislature. What do you attribute the other losses to? Was this just a hard year for Democrats? And how do you anticipate having an even smaller Democratic minority in the legislature will play out in the next general session?
Well, my job is to work with whoever is up here in Frankfort. So I'm going to keep pushing forward with record-breaking economic development, keep trying to do the right thing each and every day for our families, because things like a good job, access to healthcare, a world-class education isn't red or blue. It's just really important for each and every Kentucky family. And that's been my focus and will continue to be my focus. But if you look at what I think is a statement from Tuesday night, it was a rejection of the General Assembly's attempted power grab in both the executive and the legislative branch, and maybe in people's private lives as well. Look at it. This General Assembly put a constitutional amendment on the ballot trying to take away authority from the governor and being able to call themselves into special session when they could immediately suspend the law of 12 days and add even more. The people said no. The governor has certain jobs and you have certain jobs. Both do your jobs, and we expect you to get along. But the General Assembly also ran its own members for Supreme Court and ran the lawyer for one of our constitutional officers to Franklin Circuit Court. And they got out there and very clearly said, this is us backing these candidates. And in every one of those elections, the people said no. This is an independent branch with independent duties. General Assembly, you've got a job to do, but the executive and the judicial branch ought to be doing their job separate and apart. The people stood up for our Constitution and what it's supposed to mean. Under our Constitution, even if you have a supermajority and one chamber of one party, that doesn't mean that there aren't checks and balances from the other branches of government. That preserves our democracy and our way of life. And I think then when you look at, the other races, I think every state house seat that was lost had been gerrymandered significantly and intentionally. And I think if those districts had been run under the old map, that those individuals would have won. But we'll see what the law is going forward. You don't necessarily get to choose your terrain, but you've got to adapt to it. So, I'm sure the parties to the redistricting lawsuit are going to be looking at it and determining their next steps. But I think Tuesday's election, both in the state and nationwide, were people stepping back and saying, we're not just going to be on this team or that team. We're going to make specific and individual decisions that we think are best for our Commonwealth and for our country. All right, one last one. Christy Batista from WDRB.
Governor, I have just one question for you. You mentioned the surplus quite a few times today. Are there any plans to provide more infrastructure funding to speed some of the current projects up?
To date, I think we just crossed $1 billion that we expect in this year to invest from the state into just our road plan. We're putting historic money right now into water and sewer projects like the one that's going to help with Beargrass overflows and ultimately opened up the land for the waterfront park to expand to the west end. We've also made the largest public investment in broadband in our state's history, and we're going to have, I think it's $180+ million, though I think it's bigger than that. Let us get you that number of additional dollars for roads and bridges coming from the bipartisan infrastructure plan. So we will have record spending in infrastructure. Now we do have some major mega projects that are out there. And we'll have to be looking at different decisions from the federal government or from others about whether or not to use some of those dollars from the surplus for infrastructure. And your question's a good one, because we did really for the first time in this last budget take general fund dollars and put it towards infrastructure that's typically in the road plan. And that was so that we could do some of these large projects or do them faster. So infrastructure is not red or blue. It's just really important for our families. We are in a period of time with bigger investments in infrastructure than we've ever seen, and that's going to pay off for generations to come. And every economist that I've talked to, whether they think the economy is going this way or that way, says one of the best things that governments can do right now is invest in infrastructure. It's an investment that lasts, it creates jobs, and it reduces future costs. So we'll certainly be looking at those possibilities. But listen, I want to be remembered as a lot of things. One of them is an infrastructure governor. All right, that is this week's update. Thank you all very much. We will see you next week.